Welcome to Veterans Family Archery. I'm Wes Custer. Have you ever shot a bunch of times and your fletches just decided to start coming off your arrows like this? Well, today I'm going to show you how to fix that. So, before we get into it, there's a couple of things that you're going to need. You're going to need fletching glue. You're going to need some rubbing alcohol, some paper towels, some fine grit sandpaper, a sharp knife, and of course replacement vanes. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your sharp knife and you're going to want to cut away from yourself, cut these old blades off, but don't dig too deep. Especially if you got carbon arrows like I got, you don't want to cut into the carbon. You just want to make sure that you're cutting into the vane or into the glue, and pull the vane off. Once you got most of the vane off like that, you want to start scraping lightly. Again, being careful not to cut into the carbon. You want to keep on going. You want to try and get as much glue as you can off, but still the main focus is to get the vane off. As you can see, it's peeling it up pretty good, but we're still being real careful not to cut into the carbon. There's a lot of glue on these. If you hear the crunching, that's it breaking through the glue. Once you scrape your fletches off and you got most of the glue off, you want to take your fine grit sandpaper and you want to get all the residual glue off of the arrow shaft. So what I do is I just wrap it around and just rotate back and forth, slide it off, but you don't want to put too much pressure off of it, because again, you don't want to sand the carbon down, because then you're gonna weaken the shaft. So a little bit of light sanding, and I got the glue off. Right? So now you want to clean all that dust off, and that's where your rubbing alcohol comes into play. Now keep in mind, this isn't ideal. There's tools for this. There's a better way out there. I'm just showing you how I do it to save a couple of bucks, because these arrows are $12, $14 a piece. You know, I'm shooting them, but I still want to be safe. I don't want the arrow to explode in there. So as long as I don't gouge the arrow shaft or cut into it, then I'm not going to weaken the integrity of the arrow. So when I cleaned it off, I still find just a little bit of residual glue on there, and then I'll hit it again with this, because again, I don't want to sand into the shaft. I just want to clean the glue off. That's why we're using a real fine grit sandpaper. I think that's 1000 grit, and then when I sand it, I'm gonna clean the shaft again. I'm gonna inspect it, make sure I didn't gouge it. As you can see, it's pretty clean. There's no gouges, no cuts. While I'm in here, because these arrows have been shot a bunch, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna inspect the entire shaft, make sure there's no cracks, make sure that it's not weak. Check my insert, make sure it's good to go. Now it's ready to go in the jig. So I'm using a Jojan jig. You want to make sure your knock sits in that notch. So you want to make sure that it's sitting fairly level in there. Again, I'm gonna clean it off again, and I'm also gonna clean my hands with this rubbing alcohol to get this dust off. Because you don't want the dust to get into the glue, otherwise it's not gonna adhere right. You take my clamp. The first fletch I'm gonna put on is my cock arrow or cock vein. I'll put it in. As you can see, I got a little mark. I'm gonna line it up with the mark. I'm gonna make sure it's lined up with the mark, and I want to make sure that the vein is setting flush all the way in the clamp. All right. So if you use these a lot, you can see there's a lot of residual glue, but you want to make sure that you take a dull blade or piece of plastic and scrape this before you you set the vein down in there, so that way it sets easy. I'm also going to clean the surface of the vein where I'm gonna apply my glue to. I'm gonna let that air out a couple of seconds, make sure it's dry, and then when I apply the glue, I'm gonna apply a nice even bead all the way down the seam. So should be dry. It's dry. I think my glue dried up on me. When you're doing this, if you got your cap off, make sure you don't pull like I just did. Make sure your cap stays on until you're ready. I keep a diaper pin around just to make sure that I can clean out my my glue in case it hardens up on me. Run it through a couple of times, like so. And it doesn't take a whole lot. You just want to make sure you get a nice even bead down the center of your vein. Once you do that, I'll set the cap on there. You got a little notch here. This end goes towards the top. Puts it down, and then I'm going to make sure that my vein is sitting evenly down on the shaft. And I'm going to hold it for a couple of seconds to make sure it starts to adhere. Because again, these thin diameter shafts are a little tricky to make sure that you get a good adhesion to it. So it takes about 20 seconds with this boning fletch fuse for the glue to set. So it's been about that long. Just unclamp it, pull it over, rotate the arrow in here. Again, making sure that I'm staying in the knock, that the knock is staying in that V. Now I'll move on to my regular veins again and repeat the process. Making sure that I get everything lined up the way I want it, so that way it's even. Make sure it's set down in there. Take my alcohol, rub it again, clean my fingers, and repeat the process again. Nice, even bead. Again, put it in a notch, Make sure it's even. She sits down on there. Apply just a little bit of pressure because I don't want to put too much on there and then the thing slide out of the bait. So I'm gonna hold it for a couple of seconds. I'm gonna make sure I put my cap back on. Clamp it and then move on. When I unclamp it and I pull it off, I make sure that my vane has a good contact with the shaft before I move on. Because it's a lot easier to pull these off if you make a mistake before that glue fully sets up. Again, repeat the process. You know, I got a little mark where I like my vanes on here. Now, as my kids figure out, and the wife, when we build their arrows where they like their vanes at, I'll probably use something to color code it while we when we build their arrows for their setup that they like. You know, again, that's part of the fun of archery. You customize it to you. A lot of people like, you know, different size vanes. I like the small vanes. I think, you know, it's less drag. Get a little bit more. I like shooting a fast arrow. So I got it set on there. I'm gonna check and make sure. Good contact. Long enough. Should have good adhesion. Inspect and make sure I got good contact all the way on the shaft. And now that she's glued down on there, I'm gonna inspect it, make sure that we get good contact all the way around. And then I'm gonna take my alcohol and we'll go right down in the valley to clean off the residual glue. So that way that also reduces drag on the arrow. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I fletch my arrows. So, if you enjoy this content, you like what we're doing here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And with that, aim small, miss small.
Hi there, how are you?